All right, so it is February 3rd, 2020. This is the Communications and Technology Committee meeting. We've changed our name and added an "and," so we're more than just internet. We currently don't have a quorum, but we're going to go ahead and talk and record and see where we go. And if our other members show up, I guess we can declare a quorum and change mode. Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So from there, we'll just go through our new agenda. I've reordered this really to have the folks that spend the time and can come to these things. I want to make sure they have a chance to speak first, and I've seen that happen in other meetings, so I thought we'd give it a try here. So we've called to order, we've determined we don't have a quorum, and we have citizen comments. Anything you would like to talk about, we would love to talk to you.
I just kind of came more just to kind of keep in the loop on our current progress with connectivity out on Chapel Road.
So this is going to feel a little silly, but could I either get you up here at the mic? We were just talking about this before you got here. If you're not near a microphone and you're watching this later or someone else is watching it later, I just want everyone to hear you.
Okay. So just trying to keep in the loop with the progress on what's going on with Chapel Road situation. And I came down on Friday already and kind of spoke with Julie and
Max.
Max,
That's
thank you.
Ruben.
I know.
Hi. That's all right.
And just kind of updated them. I just called Brooke Johnson just to kind of touch base with her and see what was going on that end of things. And it sounded like they had just the week prior had a board meeting, and they're going to have another board meeting February 28th to discuss or lay out the amounts of the grant, and then have solicitation for grant applications. And then a lot of this was kind of fluid in terms of date. They weren't set in stone, but then it sounded like somewhere March, April, they would be reviewing, scoring, and I guess making decisions on grants. And then she did throw out that there probably will be a second grant round May, June, or maybe June, or somewhere around there. She just kind of was giving me a little bit of information. So I was just talking with Max, thinking, okay, are we kind of at a position where we're ready to, do what we need to have this grant information ready when this all becomes official, that we can kind of get our request in there. So that's where we kind of left it. And you did discuss, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the letter that we had presented to Julie, which she then turned to the budget committee about the proposal that we had talked about following our meeting with LCI on getting some reallocation of that
Right.
money from the Spectrum Charter annual fee or whatever. And so Max was, wondering, I think, I didn't go back and look at it, but I think generally we kind of put a summary in there about how it was affecting different folks on the road, whether it was business, education, medical. And my concern was, to make it more thorough, if I need to go to each home and have them write specifically how this situation's impacting them, then I felt that with the timeline of the grant situation, I needed a little headway to get that done, because I work and it's kind of
You don't want to do another crunch time.
It's too stressful. So we want to give it our best shot, because everybody is feeling, as you can imagine, a little bit unsure about where this is all going for us, and we feel like this is like a last ditch, and I hope it's not. I mean, as Julie mentioned to me, that there's a gentleman, I can't know if his first name is Dave, but Martens, and he works for Lincoln Health, he and his wife, and they just moved on Chapel Road, a half mile down the road from us, and they just moved into the neighborhood, and they have high-speed internet. They have two choices. And so for us that have lived on the road for many years, 32 for me, that was a little bit of pill to swallow.
The ones who live at the intersection of It has to be, there's.
Yeah.
235 in
235
Chapel,
in
and
Chapel.
they
They're
came
really
up,
close there.
yeah, they came up like to the cleaning place about
That's right,
250 feet or something.
yeah.
But when you have a new neighbor that moves in and you've been there and, you know,
And
by
they've got
rights. we
fiber service.
Exactly, by rights, we should have been connected, I still firmly believe, because we met the qualifications. I think a lot of people are getting a little bit tense about it, and I
Yep.
think we can all understand that, because there's a lot of work
Absolutely.
been put in this. I mean, I'm not speaking for myself, but Coco Hilt, who probably 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago, went this same route and came up empty, so.
Really?
Yeah, so we really want to keep this moving, we want to do what we can do. And I guess we were going to come to the budget meeting, but apparently they're only going to get 2 or 3 departments, so Julie requested that I call in on Wednesday to find out when the potential opportunity would be that they would be taking up our issue.
Yep. Yeah, we don't know whether it'll be 2 or 3 sessions this year.
Yeah,
Last year it was 3.
yeah.
I'm sorry, did you already, like, have a schedule out? I thought there was, like, one meeting done in December or January just to meet everyone in the committee, or am I?
Right, we did. We have, our first meeting is tomorrow night for the budget committee. And we'll go down as far as we can. And then the next meeting would be Thursday night.
Yeah, and that's why she wanted
That'll
me to
be
check
meeting number
Wednesday.
2.
Yeah, she wanted me to
This
check
Thursday?
Wednesday.
Yes, this Thursday. We're meeting at 6 each night. And then if we need to meet a third time, I'm suggesting to Julie that we not meet the following Wednesday, Tuesday, because we have a select board meeting that night, and we have a lot of stuff to cover. And I'm concerned if we have a budget committee meeting at the same time, that we just won't get anything done. So my suggestion will be that if we have to have a third meeting, it'd be a week from this Thursday. And that we should be done by then. So I don't think we'll be talking about it tomorrow night.
It didn't sound,
I'm
she
pretty
was
sure
pretty clear.
that it would be either this Thursday or the following Thursday. Yeah.
I don't think starting work on a grant would harm any other process we have going.
No,
Well, and this is what I mentioned to Robin when she and who was the other person's name?
Deanne
Deanne.
Puglizio, the other,
Deanne?
yeah.
Robin and Deanne asked when all this, and I suggested waiting until the CTC because I didn't know if you had something in the works, and I saw in the agenda Ruben's conversation with Brooke Johnson, so I didn't know if there was a secret thing that I didn't know about.
There was no secret thing there. Any conversation I have, my goal is if I talk about broadband with anyone in any meaningful way, I want to repeat it here.
Right.
I have no interest in any sort of, secret side conversations. Not that that's been an issue before, but I have sort of a transparent goal there. And also, sometimes that will spark a conversation or an idea or something I didn't think of. So that communication is important.
I think we've
So.
worked under that premise at Maine Health, all this.
I'm
It's
stealing a
good.
lot of ideas
That
from
is-
Maine Health.
That's good, because I think
Yeah.
it's very helpful
Yeah.
when you're working with a lot of people, and the transparency and ownership and
Mm-hmm.
just being, it makes for a better culture,
Yep.
yeah.
I think that's what we want to bring here. And it's,
so do
we've
we
got-
have 2 main health people here?
Yep.
Wonderful.
She works harder than I do.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no, I was in your department today. You do.
You've got a big project going for us right now.
Yep. So, but I think that grant, if you start now, worst case, if they start wiring the road when you're halfway through, cool, put your pen down.
Who's they that you're?
Just anyone. I don't have a specific person that's told me they're gonna come put broadband there. My point is, I don't have any concrete reason for that work to not start. I think it's a good idea. Is that?
I agree.
Okay,
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
be prepared.
yeah.
And that's how I feel. I
Yeah.
think the other hesitation I had, and I was sort of taken back a little bit, was, Julie had mentioned, well, I haven't given up on Spectrum yet, and I thought I'm losing track of time, but fall, that we kind of felt like we were told from a legal standpoint from Spectrum that they weren't under obligation to us, and that's kind of why we moved in the
LCI.
direction we did with LCI. And so for me, I just feel like, you know, even trying to get this support through the budget committee or ultimately the town, that she mentioned, you know, well, that's gonna have to go to vote, because I said, I really think the town owes it to the people on Chapel Road to get this job done and get it done soon. We cannot wait any longer. We've really, I think, been really patient. And she said, well, the money wouldn't be ready till July anyways, because of the, it has to
How it
go, it
works.
has to go to vote,
Yeah.
which I understand.
But getting it on the budget and
Yes.
getting approved for the budget is something we have to do.
No, I understand all that, but then I said, okay, so if it has to go to vote, because I think one of the last meetings, she, and I think you were sitting at the end
Yeah,
of the table and had discussed, well, maybe it doesn't have to go to vote, maybe there's a way to put it into the budget in a way, whatever. So I said, well, if it has to go to vote, then I feel like we on Chapel Road need to get out there and start talking to
The residents.
people, the residents, so they know what's going on. And then she felt like, well, no, you don't have to do that, because there may be a way to put it in the budget that it doesn't have to go that way. So I was just feeling a little confused with some of the messages that I was getting in some of the last couple meetings and the other day, because I just really feel like, you know, people are trying to be good stewards with money and fiscally responsible, and I'm just worried that, you know, this, however it would be laid out for vote, could come across to people that, well, that's just a few people up there, without them really stepping back and understanding the background information to really make a decision that would benefit the people that, at this point, most deserve it. And if we're looking at that, then we are willing on the road to do whatever we have to do publicly to make this awareness to as many people in town that will be voting and be making a decision on our behalf. Because if we lose this opportunity, I think you all know where we sit. And it is impacting us a great deal out there. There's no two ways about it.
I can't speak on the whole thing, and I can't speak on Julie. I can only make an assumption of what she means by I'm not giving up on Spectrum. I think it relates to what happened on, Ruben may have to confirm, was it, I think it was Goshen Road for Spectrum, like John Lawrence was talking about how Goshen wasn't connected and Spectrum just did it one
So
day.
I don't have any data on that, other than hearing a rumor that it happened. And all that stuff aside, any of these situations, whether Spectrum wires it, whether LCI wires it, or whether a third company that doesn't exist to us wires it, I would still start the grant, because the reality is when you start that work, that framework could be for LCI, it could be for Spectrum. Some of this is going to be how much money does the grant cover and how much does the town have to put in? And we've got a lot of sort of parallel ideas and processes coming in. I wouldn't let that slow you down. I think we're gonna end up with maybe some work we don't use, but if that's all started now,
We'll be
one
ready.
of these tools will be the right thing. And it's not an infinite list. You're not gonna have to do, or no one's gonna have to do 99 different
Well,
tasks.
we've already done the grant once,
Yeah.
so we have
Yes.
a pattern, if you will,
I'll do that.
to use.
No, I didn't mean it as don't do the work. I just meant it
Oh,
as
absolutely.
I meant it as certainly OWL or LCI will do the work
Yeah.
to get the application. I'm just saying that might be what Julie meant by it. I can't confirm that.
Okay, well, I was just concerned because I think
We'll certainly do.
we feel a little bit vulnerable. Okay, so now if we've got to do all this, we need to get out there and get going, because that June or whenever we have the meeting to vote, we don't
don't
want
wanna
to
miss
be at the, you know,
Right. Don't want to wait
11th
another.
hour down there, and most of us that are doing the work are working or going to school.
Yeah.
Right, and I think it was said at that meeting as well, if Spectrum decides to do it out of the blue for some reason, then fine, but we're doing the application in this next round. That's what we've been waiting on. And you have, Chapel has been very patient on that deadline, and so I will at least So we can only do the application,
Right, so will we be working with,
LCI.
LCI, because they've done that grant, like they did a similar project over in Alner and Bodenham under kind of the same kind of situation.
Well, I think with those ones, they were on a much more grander scale, but
It
yes.
was grander, but
But yes,
the foundational pieces of it, you know, they got the grant, the town
Right.
put in, and then LCI put in.
Mhm.
And it sounded like they worked with the town to write that up.
yeah, that's what we'd be doing.
Well, and that makes sense too, because they're basically there now.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of stringing more wire down the road, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
We're
that's
on it.
all I have, yeah, so I'll, if the chair wants me to do it, I'll start getting on that then.
Yes, please? We
Yeah.
can't vote, but if that's,
No,
I don't think
I'll
we
be
have- okay.
advocating for what you're advocating for as
No,
well.
I mean, I was gonna do it, I just wanted to make sure
Right.
there was no secret thing as I.
no, you don't know
Secret-
anything.
Secret thing that you'll say
Right.
on public
No,
TV.
no one here knows anything I don't know, I don't think. I'm also being careful not to step on toes of like town managers and things, and none of this sounds like, there are items that we make sure Julie communicates to directly when it comes to talking to vendors and having those conversations. I don't think this is any of that.
No, and it's
So-
better if all come out of the same person's mouth
Yep.
anyway, rather
Yep.
than getting mixed signals.
And I'm not trying to stir up.
We don't
I'm-
take,
No.
we
Yeah,
don't take it that way
I'm just
at
working
all.
as a citizen, and that's
Yep.
one reason I've been hesitant to fill out an application, because
Mm-hmm.
once I become a part of the board, I know that I won't have the latitude to do what I'm doing, so I feel like I am more effective for my neighbors
As a private citizen.
working as a citizen at this point, and that's what we want to do until we get this, because a lot is hinging, and
Yep.
I can't overstate, you know, if you guys could come out there and go and knock on some doors, you'd see exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And, you know, my husband and I, yeah, we could make a go of it. We're kind of in a, but the other 90% of the people, they need it, especially Dion.
Yeah.
I mean, her,
My heart goes out to her.
and I'll tell you, she's having it rough in a lot of other ways, and we're being really neighborly and trying to work with that, but she's really working hard to get a step up and get a career that she can support herself. And when she's needing to run to a coffee shop, you know, on a cold winter night or afternoon, it's tough.
Yep.
And there are other people out there, and that's why, you know, I mentioned to Julie, I said, we cannot wait any longer. Either someone's gonna do it or they're not, and I think right now the grant seems to be the strongest option.
Yep, and you guys are our next highest density target. We'll work on the next thing once Chapel's done. But, I mean, that's the reality. You guys are the next pocket that I think we can get
It
something
is-
done there.
It is the
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit at
Yeah.
this point.
And I really feel like, you know, if you're watching the news at all, there's a lot of other communities around. Bremen is talking. I just saw in the news last week what's going on up in Bangor. You know, they're trying to upgrade their officials, are sending out stuff to their citizens. We've got the folks that are farmers, and I think maybe they might get some other type of grant I was listening to, but, you know.
You're
this-
describing the USDA grant.
Yeah,
Yep.
but you know, but there's a lot of needs out there, and that's why I feel like we just need to get it done and have it over with.
Yeah. No, we need to get you folks some broadband, and that will empower you to do other things.
Yeah.
So many things are connected to that now.
Because we are being left behind,
Mm.
No, we don't care for it, that's for sure.
so anyways, okay.
We'll
Thank
get
you
it
for
done.
listening.
Well, thank you for being involved. Don't stop.
No.
So we'll see you either Thursday night,
Yeah, I'll call Julie on
Okay.
Wednesday and
Yep.
figure that out, what's
see
going
where we are
on.
in terms of the schedule.
Okay, I'm
Good.
gonna cut out.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Molly.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for
Thanks,
being here.
Matt.
We'll see you around, I'm sure.
You getting us connected over there? Is work happening? I've been off a couple days.
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff coming.
That's
You're gonna like it.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was citizens' comments.
That's exactly what I wanted. I gave her, and I'll give it to anyone that asked me for it. I gave her my cell phone number because she doesn't have internet, so she'll text me, hey, is there a meeting today? Yep,
Good.
absolutely. Come do the thing.
It works.
Yeah.
That was a good conversation. and she already talked about it. I mentioned to her that, hey, we could use a couple new members maybe on the CTC. This group used to be bigger than it is now.
Yeah.
And her point was, she's trying to get her road wired. She doesn't feel right about being on the group while they're wiring that road. Okay, fair enough. She's already advocating for the road.
Right?
She mentioned she spoke to Brooke Johnson, which was a good conversation. And I had another similar conversation. I don't know if I don't think I forwarded or included you in my original email to Brooke.
Probably not.
So, and I've since added you. I was using Waldeboro CTC, and you and Julie weren't cached. You are now. So there was an email, an opportunity to provide feedback on their current standards.
I have seen that actually.
Okay.
I saw your emails.
Yep. And she called me rather than email back. Brooke actually called me, and it was a great conversation, and put me at ease. And the
She's
headline.
opted for what, 2510, is that it?
So that's actually a different thing. So the state is continuing for the next year to define broadband as 25 by 3.
Oh, jeez.
But, and you had the same reaction I did. My answer was, hey, if we allow 25 by 3 to be broadband, that's just the cutoff for DSL. What you came back with was 25 by 3 or lower is considered unserved, which is a different statement from
Right.
25 by 3 being broadband.
Right, or unserved.
Yeah. So the 25 by 10 is what the FCC is talking about using. And I need to dig back in and see if that has been validated or if that's just what they're suggesting. That 10 megabit upload is the difference between copper DSL and cable or fiber. And while I want to get gig fiber everywhere, even getting a technology like cable that will do a 10 megabit upload, there's a cutoff there where you can get much higher speeds compared to what DSL will do. DSL will do 25 by 3, maybe a little higher if you're next to the device. Cable is 100 by 10, 400 by 20, and 940 by 40 in Maine.
Cable is what?
100 by 10 base, 100 megabits down, 10
Yeah.
up, 400 down by 20 up, or 940 down by 40 up.
And that's cable?
That's cable internet. That's technology called DOCSIS 3.0, actually 3.1,
DOCSYS?
DOCSIS 3.1. And this is another document that I'm not done writing yet. I volunteered via an email chain to describe sort of the state of, well, not the state of the art, the current state of broadband available in Waldeboro and what those numbers really mean. Because cable has gone from everything from 128 kilobits up to this thing where you can do 940 by 40.
So are you suggesting that I could do DOCSIS 3.1 in front of my place on Friendship Road?
Yeah. And if you want, sometime we can meet up and I'll look at your modem and tell you what you need to do, because if you can get cable, a lot of it's the equipment. If you have a 10-year-old modem on business grade and it's never been upgraded, that's your real limitation. You've also got to.
No, we don't. We have a relatively recent modem.
Okay. The next option is, how often do you call them and ask what plan you're on? Because while they were Time Warner, they had a very sort of fragmented system with a lot of different speed tiers. Spectrum has fewer options, but they're higher quality. So a new Spectrum business account, and I haven't gotten the retail prices for Spectrum business yet, but their baseline is 200 by 10 if you're a commercial grade connection.
And if you're not commercial,
100 by 10.
that's as high as they'll go for
No,
residents?
That's the
no,
base.
that's
That's
the
the base.
baseline. That's
Okay.
entry. At my house, I pay $95 a month. I think it's 90 or
And
95.
what do you get?
400 by 20. And it's actually faster than that. And if any of you want to come over and see the rig I duct taped together, you don't actually have to go crazy high end to get those speeds. It's about maintenance. And not all wires created equally. And there's a reason I bought a home where I bought it. But you can do surprisingly well in those speeds, and they are surprisingly consistent in my experience and the few other people I've worked with. Which is really just family and friends that have cable as well. But you know how it is. If you're the IT guy, you get called to fix their stuff, and you have, I've got a small 5-10 person sample, I think. So there's a lot that can be done there. That being said, if LCI lit up the thing in front of my house, I can't, as an IT nerd, I couldn't not go to fiber. And that's less about LCI and more about fiber has more potential right now. But it's amazing what you can do over a piece of coax. And for that matter, a phone line if you apply the right solutions.
So if you're 200 feet from the road
Mm-hmm.
and they bring the coax into your modem,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go off of that modem into the house.
Yep.
There's 2 buildings
Yeah.
with coax as well.
You wouldn't go with coax from there. You'd have coax into the modem,
So you'd use
Ethernet.
this cable.
Mhm. Looks
And
like
is
a
that
giant phone
faster
jack.
or as fast as the cable?
So it's faster. Okay, so now you're getting into a much wider thing. So Ethernet exists at 10 megabit, 100 megabit, gigabit, and 10 gigabit.
So it depends on which Ethernet cable they strung from the modem to the house.
And the rest of the equipment inside the house. It
Okay.
gets a lot wider. So my house is wired with bog standard Ethernet. So I'm using a tech called Cat5e, which is, I don't know, I'm not sure how old that is, but it's definitely not brand new. I'm using a gigabit switch, and I'm using a wireless AC access point, which is what, it's real similar to the Ubiquitys the town has. Different brand, same stuff under the hood. So with that, I can get 400 by 22, everything in my house connected with a wire, and I can also get that speed over Wi-Fi with every device connected on a new current generation wireless device. And then I have some other network gear in there that does some other super boring stuff that manages the traffic and moves it around. So things like my smart devices are separated, so if my thermostat was compromised, they couldn't see my credit card transactions. Reasonable humans would not do this in their home, by the way. But the speed's been pretty consistent through all of that.
And,
So,
but they specify it as up to. They don't guarantee you symmetry at all, do they?
so Spectrum over cable, it's a little odd. The phrase up to I haven't seen in our current stuff.
You
They-
haven't?
They say minimum, so it's at least 100 megabit.
Really?
Yeah. You can't guarantee that through everything, but to wherever they get their internet connection, my experience is those speeds have been pretty consistent. So in the stuff Spectrum or Tidewater or AT&T or whoever can control, the bandwidth they give you is back to their hub. So if I'm connecting to Netflix and whoever Netflix is coming from can't send me 400 megs of data, then it's not going to test out that fast. And it gets tricky because when you use speed tests, you know, what different connections are you going through?
Right.
When I post speed tests online, I usually run a couple different ones and average them out. But that tech's come a long way. It's always possible to oversell anything, including fiber. If you have too many people and you have a node that's not served fast enough, you can break that way down. Most of my road is Spectrum, and I haven't had an issue. I don't know how that compares to a bunch of people on the same thing from LCI because I haven't put hands on that tech. And honestly, even if I knew, I would never say one's better than the other. My goal is to sort of have a list of what the technologies are in town, what they will do, and what their retail price is. And retail price is important because if you Google Spectrum, they say, what, $45 a month? Which is a great deal for your first year. I don't want to share that information. I want to say, this is your retail cost. And if you get a better deal for a little while, awesome. But how many times have people been disappointed or had an issue because they didn't understand that?
Right.
And there's sort of an older thing where people were used to calling an older company and negotiating price. And that's gone away. But Spectrum will also tell you, you can expect this much. This is what it will cost you, and you're not going to be surprised. LCI's done a lot of the same stuff. If you look at their webpage, they say they have their speeds listed, they have for new customers only. But it is very black and white. There's not a lot of digging that you have to do with either ISP to figure out what you're getting, which is kind of nice.
Which Spectrum office do you deal with?
So it depends on what I'm doing. If I need a modem, I go to the Rockland office.
On Old County Road?
Yep. Mostly because one of my desks is across the street from that building. So it's,
Convenience.
yeah, I can see it. So, and that if I need support, usually I call in. So, you know, my parents' phone goes out, not a lot, but sometimes they'll have an issue for whatever reason. I don't take that to the local office, mostly because it's a sales place. They will try, but I don't think they're equipped to support that. Spectrum has, I think, a pretty good phone support system. It's not the same as calling and getting someone that you can find in town. It's kind of nice with LCI. You've probably met the guy that's helping you, which is pretty unique.
Yeah.
I also have a pretty thin experience with support because I do most of my own stuff. If it doesn't work, I'll call them and say, hey, this isn't working. Those conversations usually end with them asking me if I work there because I've had so many of them, I repeat the right things back to them.
So I'm just gonna ask if we can go back to the call you had with Brooke Johnson.
We should.
And
I
I'm
got-
only just saying that because I do love the tech talk and everything, but as I said earlier, I have to leave at 6:30 to pick up Jen.
So I'll condense. I've never had a bad experience with Brooke. Brooke has had at least one not great experience with me with an overexcited email back in, I want to say 2016.
Now, Brooke's always very good and responsive.
She's awesome. And as I deal with more people, there's a reason they're doing what they're doing, but it's nice to have consistent, smart people up at the state. It makes me feel good about the stuff we have to do here. So the conversation was just back to that email. They send out, you know, the request for comment on, hey, these are the standards we're looking at. This is how we voted.
I saw the exchange.
Yep. I sent my thoughts back, which is a bulleted list of how I thought the technology would work, and probably an unnecessary explanation of how cable internet worked. I think Brooke knows more than I do. Anyway, Getting a call back the next day was pretty awesome. I don't expect that as a level of service consistently from someone that busy, but it showed a level of engagement. You know, I identified what I'm trying to do for the town, and I'm sure that was part of it. But anyway, her callback was very simple and straightforward, and she just defined what we're trying to do is say if your internet is 25 by 3, and if it tests at that or lower, then you qualify for a grant to get better broadband somewhere.
Okay.
And then when you qualify for that, the reason I went off on the tangent on all the cable speeds and everything is it's really down to 2 technologies. It's cable internet or it's fiber. I asked the question about wireless versus wired. On places like Chapel Hill, there's no radio in the air that can meet either of those, so it sort of doesn't matter. Satellite's going to start coming up at some point. And I don't mean the current carriers. If you follow things like SpaceX, they're doing new things with a lot of much lower orbit satellites. The interaction is a lot different, and so there's no pricing and there's no performance, which is another reason I didn't include those guys, 5G cellular, and I don't think Midcoast Legacy Tech is really on anymore. Those radios are mostly gone if I understand correctly.
Midcoast Legacy Tech.
Midcoast Legacy Tech, Midcoast Internet Solutions used to exist here.
Right, MIS.
Yeah. GWI purchased them.
Right.
And as far as I know, as that equipment fails, it's not being maintained or
Just from
serviced.
up North Waldeboro.
Yeah. Also, their best speeds still aren't going to qualify for the minimums. I don't think the upload exists.
So 25 by 3 is underserved,
Mhm.
and 25 by 10 is
Served.
Is served.
So
Well, that's
the
not
FCC is different from the states. So at a state level, they're calling broadband better than 25 by 3.
Okay.
And that's according to my conversation with Brooke, but I'm taking her at her word. My interaction's been good enough. That's what she said to me. Great. And if I'm wrong, we can correct. The FCC was defining broadband as 25 by 3, which is, I think, where the state definition came from. And now they're looking at changing that to 25 by 10.
But they haven't done it yet.
I don't know if they've done it yet. As I haven't found documentation, and to be honest, I haven't had the time to sit down and focus on that issue.
If the feds change it,
Mm-hmm.
how likely is it that the state will change it?
That is a great question. So that's a question I intend to repeat. If we find that the FCC, the federal definition is 25 by 10, it's probably time for a very nice email to Brooke. Hey, we noticed this. Is this going to be considered? Because there are federal grants for that stuff. Do we have 2 separate measurements depending on where the grant comes from? Or do they want to do what happened with 25 by 3? I mean, there's some smart folks in there. They've got some great names on that board. So I think it'll be worth asking the question. And I think when the question's asked, it'll be considered.
Okay.
That's the most information I have. I'm sure there's something that's more up to date than I am. That's just everything I know.
Yeah.
So what prompted her to call you was her interest in what you're doing here locally.
Well, I think it was a mix of that and my email. You know, I thought that they were, in my email, I thought that if someone had DSL at 25 by 3, they would be considered served. And my issue with that was if you have DSL at that speed,
You got the
It's not-
DSL.
right, it's not going to get any better. You can only, who knows what science will do. The current state of the technology, as I understand it, that's about the best you're going to do. And that means you're going to have to be a lot closer than folks are in Waldoboro. The other thing Brooke went out of her way to say is it's not what your ISP says you're paying for, it's what the connection at your house can do.
Right.
Which was a very important statement to me. The 25 by 3 aside, I would challenge anyone that pays for that service to actually show that speed consistently. And I was pleased that I didn't have to prompt them for that. That was a conversation someone had well before my name was ever in email anywhere. And that means we've got some folks that are really well aware of what the technology can do. Makes me feel better.
Yeah. Okay.
Just curious about that.
Did that get you what you're up to where you feel you need to be?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was just curious about the phone call.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great. Well, you communicate with Brooke, I think. I've heard you say
I
that before.
I do tend to talk to her when Robin wants to talk more about Chapel or whenever we're getting close to the Connect to Maine grants.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I guess that's the thing that Brooke mostly probably knows me for, just Chapel and Connect to Maine grants.
Every town has the areas they're trying to fix. I think that's,
Yeah.
you know, you're easy to work with. I think that's probably fine.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone that's on the internet wants to know, Max is pretty good to talk to.
In the research you've done with Spectrum, are they requiring contracts for specified lengths of time?
So that's actually in my list. No, is the short version. On home. Internet for business, I don't know.
Yep.
Internet for business, I've seen language about price guarantees for X amount of time. I haven't gone into what's required for a new account. My goal here is to bolt down the retail stuff, the stuff most of our citizens will use. I want to take a second pass at the business stuff because there's going to be separate questions there. And that might even be, maybe that will come up for someone at a different committee like the EDC. There's some education that can happen there too, but I feel like they're sort of separate.
Yep, they are.
As far as I can tell, LCI is for either kind. They want a 3-year commitment at their prices. And then Spectrum doesn't. They have an install fee, but I don't know if Spectrum does or not.
Have you pay the same amount for 3 years? Wait.
No, so if I sign up as a new Spectrum customer on whatever plan, sometimes there's an installation fee. I think it's like a $50 install fee, and they come to your house and they test
Yeah.
everything. I don't know what LCI's analog is there.
They've been inconsistent.
Okay,
They've sometimes had an install fee, and then they do a promotion, and they say installation is free.
right.
So you,
And I mean, they're a new product. They're doing that competitive thing, and I get that. And I have a note written down about LCI's contract, but I was really just interested in what that price is.
I think with LCI, I had to pay $100
Mhm.
when I was getting installed.
did you buy the symmetrical service, or did you buy the asymmetrical service?
Initially, I bought the 30 by 30 plan.
You did.
Yep. But then, I think it must have been a year later, they then had a 50 by 10 plan, and I said, well, I would pretty much like that instead.
That was less expensive.
Well, no, I had to pay the same price, but it was about the same price actually. I think had I not done the 30 by 30 earlier, I think it might have been maybe $10 difference,
Mhm.
but it's.
So you preferred a faster download speed.
Well,
Because-
Ruben would probably say it. I don't really need
You don't need
upload
10.
service too much. Not that many people probably do, except for businesses.
It depends on what you do, even for businesses. So I've been Spectrum the whole time I've lived in Waldoboro because that was my option.
Right.
So I've gone from 2 to 4 to 10 megabits up. 2 to 4 was nice. Going to 10 was amazing because if I'm doing video conferencing, whatever happens at 10 megs up, people are getting a much clearer picture from me. And if you combine a lot of things, if a bunch of people are working concurrently, you need more than that. But that's enough to get a pretty clear, consistent thing. After that, if you're uploading a lot of videos, I once tried to write a thing out. I only finished it halfway, and I was trying to define internet speeds in photos of your grandkids per minute, based on the size of a photo an iPhone will
Right.
take. An iPhone will take like a 16 megabyte photo. A 10 megabit connection is 1.2 megabytes a second, about, of actual bandwidth. So if you break that math out times how many pictures you took of Billy today, that will tell you where the value in that service is. Some people are going to care, some aren't. Now, if you're a business and backing all your stuff up, now it's a different
That's
game.
valuable, yeah.
Even at home, the 20 meg up I have, I got that because my wife's also a computer nerd. So we would compete for that upload. If I'm on call and connecting back to the office, that uses a certain amount of throughput. Going to that 20 meg meant my experience was smooth all the time. And I'm sure I could find something to do with it. It's that empty nest syndrome. If you said, hey, aren't you using this? I could redline it if I thought about it. So I guess it depends on what you need. Most home users, I think, would be hard stretched to take advantage of that symmetrical connection. Not all, but most. Businesses, if you're set up properly with the right backup and all these other resources, well, then it's a whole different game. But it depends on how big you are and how much advantage are you taking of these technologies. We've got a lot of folks that aren't thinking about it because they can't.
Right.
If you put a 100 meg synchronous connection in front of somebody that's never been able to use it, unless you educate them and they modernize in certain things, there's not a lot they can do with that. At the same time, if you're a business selling things online and you want to upload 100 photos of whatever your product is, then you're going to notice, hey, this took a lot less time to upload to Google Drive. I love Google Drive. I keep so much stuff on there. I've broken so many phones and I've just signed back in and everything was back there. And more things are cloud-based. If you buy an iPhone, you're not even thinking about it and you are uploading even when you're at home. So it's not necessarily a hard sales pitch to make. I would prefer to get whatever this medium is in front of the houses first and then see if they can upgrade it. Fiber, cable, whatever. Even fiber on paper can go really fast, but if you're only offering 100 by 20, what's the point?
Yeah.
And that's at least the medium's up. Then it's policy change, and I'm sure they have to get to a right volume. And that goes outside of this. LCI does not need me to tell them how to sell their product. They're working on that on their own.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
for-
sir.
That was a lot of words. Sorry, if I left something out, please tell me.
No, I mean, I didn't have too much to say on that. I was just gonna say, I use it for streaming and games, so I just want download.
A good 4K video stream will use about 25 megabits by itself. That's the most, outside of installing a very large program, that's probably the thing that's going to beat on the connection the most without using a computer. So an Apple TV or a Roku or your cell phone, the fastest I've seen on a 4K HDR movie, like Marvel, which I love, that's the most bandwidth I've seen used at my house.
Download speeds, right?
Yeah, download
Okay.
speed for that one stream.
Again, you have 10 down, right?
Well, I have 400 down.
No problems.
Yeah. What I have in my router, there's a piece of software called pfSense, and there's a lot of reading, but once you get that going, you can see what you can see what every single thing is doing for bandwidth. So if I spin a lot of things up, I can actually see what they're doing. And I have to do that because my wife will ask me, hey, what's with this $100 internet bill? You need to justify this. And if there's not a graph, there's going to be a problem.
Fair
Gotta
enough.
cover your tracks.
But it's also very interesting in terms of what do people really need. Because if I'm not watching movies or if I'm not installing Office 2016, I'm probably okay on a 50 down most of the time. Most of the time I'm not going to know unless I get into those things or I'm installing the latest video game. The coolest thing about higher speeds, let's say you get everyone onto gigabit, you have, I think, less chance of everyone saturating their gigabit connection because even if you light that connection up to install a big application, you're going to do it for a smaller window of time. So if Max and I are both installing Office 2016, it'll go really fast, but not for very long, leaving enough room for everyone else to work. You know, it's a wider highway.
Yeah.
That's why I'd love to see fiber go to straight gig. You could do
So much.
a lot more without competing with people. The other side of that is what is your ISP feeding that? So if Ruben starts an ISP and my connection's only a gig and I sell a gig connection to 100 people, well, we could get into trouble. Where's that balance? And our buddies like at LCI, they're smart, they're very conservative. I've got to believe that's part of their plan there, which means they'll exist for a while. They're not in this to lose money. There's something to be said for that. I don't think, did I have anything else in here? There's some things in here that not everyone else is here for. I realized we don't have a vice chair right now. We don't have a secretary right now.
I pretty much take care of all of
Thank
that
you.
stuff. So.
I appreciate that. I talked about the conversation with Brooke.
Did you get the, I think I emailed to you what the old committee had but never acted on in terms of a mission statement and a
I think so. I haven't.
definition of what their job was.
Yeah, you sent me a really good write-up, and I read it once, and I haven't had enough time to give it the proper attention.
Okay.
So I need to go, I read it once, and I remember thinking, this is pretty good, and I haven't gone back to it,
Right, there's stuff in there you probably won't be interested in.
and that's fine.
And no, it is
Yeah.
fine, but I really felt you needed to see that because
Yeah.
we haven't done anything with it.
All right, well, we can
And it
combine
would be
those
nice
things,
to
and,
do something.
yeah. And I think that could meld in well with bringing some, I'd love to get some more people in, I'd love
Yeah.
to meet whoever we have come in. I asked if, everyone here probably is, the state committee is the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, and they have a mailing list. And one of the things they send out is they'll send out current LDs, and they send it out ahead, so if you want to go to the meeting, you can.
What's the URL for that?
I will forward it to you.
Okay.
Because I have it in email. What I wanted to do with that, if, I'm hoping, anyone that's on this committee, I would like to have on that list, and I would like to have sort of a volunteer sheet of who's available to go to this meeting about this subject, and if they can go to one, just report back to the group about it.
Right.
I'll go to everything I can, but I don't feel the need to be the only owner of that.
You can't spread yourself too thin.
Well, that, and if it was only me, we'd be subject to just my opinion on that. Part of the value of this group is different opinions and just different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And I want to leverage that. You know, we got a lot of talent and brain power in the town, so if we can kidnap some of them into this, that'd be pretty neat.
It'd be good.
Well, in terms of the mailing list, it can still come right here, the town office. I mean, Bob, Julie, myself, we're already gonna be here.
Yep.
You can pick it up here. We could forward it to your
Mhm.
address. It can go either way, really. The I assume that's,
I have no axe to grind on that. It's just the,
If it get, I just want it to get there, whatever
Yeah,
the method
exactly.
is.
yeah. So I don't mind putting the town's address on the
Okay.
mailing address for that.
Great.
And then in terms of going up to Augusta, I don't mind leaving a day or two just so I can drive up.
No, that's, yeah, if you want to do that
Stretch my
too,
legs.
that's great, yeah.
I was actually gonna even say, like, for the February meeting for Connect Maine, I'll probably just go up and do the, just see what that conversation's like, because I remember doing that with John Lawrence originally, and it just stopped once the Connect Maine grant stopped.
Yep.
So I could probably get back into doing that.
No, that'd be great, and if more than one person can go, there's no
Carpool.
rule that says, yeah, carpool, and there's no thing that says only one person has to be there.
Yeah, there's a thing that like 3 committee members would be a public meeting at that point,
Okay.
but Bob's not an official member.
Right. Well, if we had any kind of, even an unofficial volunteer list, which I think would just be a Google Doc, just so we know who's gonna try and go.
Yeah. No, it all works.
So-
So we can work on that.
And the only other thing I had on here was I had a couple LDs, which I've attached documents to a piece of paper, which is super helpful.
you don't have any numbers, though.
One was LD 1977, which was, it's a personal interest thing, but it's about technology. It's a thing called Right to Repair.
Right for repair?
Right
Right
to
to
Repair.
repair.
Right to repair?
So if you buy, let's pick a brand that's definitely not John Deere. If you buy that and want to repair it yourself, you can't. If you change a gizmo on
Say
this thing.
Mahindra.
Really? Mahindra?
Mahindra,
Okay.
it's
All
a
right.
good Indian tractor.
Okay, great.
What's with the tractors? Okay.
Well, it's coming up a lot in farming communities and things like that.
Exactly.
We've got some of those around here. So some of the stuff you can fix on your own, but some of it, if you change even somewhat minor components, you can't turn the device back on. And so you own the device, but you're basically renting access to software. And that's a really, really very narrow explanation of that. It's a whole can of worms.
So what is the intent of the bill?
The intent of the bill is to make it so these companies have to make certain resources available to you so you can buy parts or access software. There's a lot of hearings that are up, including State of Maine, and it's a big thing. It's not just tractors. It's everything from tractors to computers to video games. And there is certain stuff that you wouldn't want to be able to do, and it's a very wide argument.
What was the
LD 1977.
1977?
And so there's not necessarily something I don't think for this group to do with it, but at some point, because we've included technology in the name and the way we've sort of positioned ourselves, there's a couple of farms in this
That's a good
community.
idea.
I'm expecting someone to have an opinion about it.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
I've emailed Abden, I emailed Mr. Dow, and I sent a note to Janet Mills. She has a great inbox, they respond, just to tell them what I thought personally. And that's after informing myself. And while my opinion's probably obvious, it's not something I intend to bring to this other than to say, read it and see what you think. Whatever more people think, I hope that group wins.
Okay.
And the other LD, I wish I'd had the number on here properly. It was about the USDA funding. And the wording on the copy I read was very interesting because it was specifically about gigabit broadband. And they were very specific on that term.
And what is this? Just
So it's a $15 million fund that people can apply to get gigabit broadband placed, wherever they get the grant for. It didn't look like something that we would qualify for here. It's still a case study. It's still very interesting. The fact that they were very specific in not just the technology, but the speed was new, or at least new to me. I've seen people insist on fiber or go with whatever ISP they can get. And a lot of people want, gigabit's the thing. That's the goal. You want gig fiber. That's the place to go. So the fact that that was so very specific was very interesting to me. Companies like LCI, they're capable of delivering that. There's a cost issue. I'm sure there's a scale issue. But if they applied for something like that, would that let them get bigger? If an ISP with fiber gets larger, that can't hurt us. Even if they get larger in a part of Maine that's not Waldoboro, having a neighbor see more success wouldn't be bad. So I'm sort of watching that. And it also means competition. As soon as you have one ISP delivering better bandwidth,
You have
cable
the others
internet,
looking at it.
cable internet's not done. There's a software thing coming that will let them do up to 10 gig synchronous over the tech if they complete it. And that's DOCSIS 3.1 full duplex. That's halfway done. You can't buy that yet. You couldn't get it if you showed up with a dump truck full of money, but it's coming.
DOCSIS 3 point,
3.1
Yeah.
full duplex. Full duplex is just network slang for synchronous.
Yeah.
Yeah, full doubling,
Yeah.
I get it.
And that's still over copper, and you can do that over coax because coax is really just the
So
last
they could
mile
actually run that over the cables we now have installed in town,
from the pole to your house.
from the pole to the house.
Most of their network is actually fiber optic. They got, at some point, I think Time Warner got sued for advertising their hybrid coax fiber network, but most of their backbone is fiber. Most internet is fiber. Your dial-up, a significant amount goes through fiber optic somewhere. It's what you can make that last mile of technology do. So, you know, it's an interest. This stuff has grown. You can do quite a bit with it. They've gotten pretty creative. So you can't buy that 10 gig right now, but in a lab somewhere it does work. So it's only a matter of time. That's also why
Wow.
I'd rather get fiber somewhere, but one of the reasons I'm not down on cable internet, I get it's not as fast as some of the other stuff you can do.
But it's still,
The state of the art in just the last 3 years is a different world from where we were. When I moved here, I could get 60 by 4, I think, or 60 by 2 or something. It's moving and it's moving fast. And this next thing is supposed to be a software upgrade. It's not different hardware, it's different firmware that makes all the gizmos go. And it's just using a different spectrum of radio somehow. That's where I wish John were here, because he was a lot smarter about that than I am. But at a broad stroke, that tech still has room to grow. Of course, you can do neat things over fiber too. You're talking tens and sometimes hundreds of gigs. I don't know what you do with that except tell your friends you have that much speed.
So if I'm given the option, we have a business in the barn that's moving out,
Yep.
and they're gonna move to a different location,
Mhm.
and obviously have a different technology.
Mhm.
So we're talking about, well, what should they leave for us? And what we have in that building is probably 2 to 3 years old.
Mhm.
Should we be buying that, or should we be upgrading now?
It really depends on what's in there. I've seen 10-year-old tech that was high enough end when it was purchased that it's still in production. You know, if someone bought a $90 network switch 5 years ago, it might or might not be worth it. Every single instance is different. It really depends on what's physically there.
Okay,
If you get a photo of it, I'll tell you what I know about.
I'll give you a photo of it.
Sure. It's weird. I do that at work kind of, and then it's my hobby when I'm off the clock, so I don't mind lending that info. Plus, it benefits Waldeboro. Ultimately, that's what happens.
So you want a photo of the modems?
Yep. Preferably with the model number and stuff from the back. That'll let me say something halfway intelligent. And if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. That's important too.
yeah, it's always good to know that. All right. I didn't know if anyone else had any
You
comments.
need to go pick up Jen.
I'm gonna have to go pick up Jen soon.
I'm out of hot air. Thanks for letting me go on at length.
Oh, love it.
Well, I mean, I know I have to pick up Jen, but I want to just ask a question
Sure.
because when the streetlights were happening, one thing that came up, at least from John, was about public Wi-Fi. That was something that was a very interesting idea to do, and I don't mind looking at it again. I just didn't want to tie it into the rest of the streetlights because I just wanted the energy efficiency aspect.
Mhm.
There was 2 routes I was told about the whole time. There was the first route of you get the smart controls and then it's just an adaptation to it. You know, it's just
Mhm.
another thing to add on. And then the second one is what apparently, I guess, Rockland has, where the town buys the whole pole, and LCI fiber's hooked up to it. And do you have any insight on that?
So I have, and this has gotten me in, well, not in trouble. I've started internet fights with this statement. And
Oh,
this,
dear.
This statement is wire is always faster than air. That includes fiber. A physical link is better than repeating a cellular connection. So using the smart control would take whatever cellular 4G, 5G, and it takes that and then it repeats it over Wi-Fi. That will never be as good as taking a wireless access point and feeding it with fiber optic or even cable internet. That wireline connection is what matters.
Right.
When you get to that point, though, streetlights are a convenient place to put it. It depends on what you own, because if you own the building behind the streetlight no longer matters if the building's high enough. You just need to get something that will shout radio, plug into the back of it.
Well, I think the conversation was about having it at the Pine Street landing.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's no building there.
There's
Well,
no-
there's houses up there.
There's houses up there. I think this was more of just if people are at Pine Street Landing, they have internet. I don't remember the end goal of it, but
The end goal was that fishermen coming in could go online
okay.
using that Wi-Fi
Mhm.
and report whatever they have to the state,
All right,
or report whatever they have to their buyer,
got it.
who can then show up half an hour later and take it away, and off you go, you're done.
Mhm.
All right. I just didn't know if that was something to. This is the CTC. Are we saying CTC or CNTC?
Communications and Technology Committee. I had some other idea, which is what CTAC stood for, and I've forgotten what it was, but I already built the address.
We could call it CATSI.
Yeah, there you go.
CATSI.
Yeah.
Well, what I was curious if this is something that CATSI would be interested in looking more at, since this is CATSI.
I think it's right up our alley.
Yeah, talk about it, absolutely.
All right. Not today, because
No, that's fine.
But we can come to something, we can bring something specific to the table at some
Yeah.
point and discuss it.
Yeah, and when it's not minus 100 outside, like, I'll go stand there with you. I don't think I've been to the landing. Pretty sure. I'd have driven by it, but I love the ocean. I don't go there a lot. I go work and then I either come here for a meeting or go home and go to bed. So I haven't physically been to a lot of these locations. Yeah.
It's a short drive.
Great.
all right. Well, that's all I had then.
Cool.
Let's.
I guess we're done.
Yeah, there are no other
Did we
public
record this?
comments.
Did we record this?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so we can turn it off.
Yep.